Hello, you rainbow royalty, I am Ace Explains, and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about gender identities and different types of gender identities. And before I start this, I do want to say that any gender identity can use whichever pronouns feel the most comfortable to them. So now that that's out of the way, let's begin. So we'll start with some of the most commonly known ones. Firstly, we have female, and that can also be known as AFAB, which is an acronym for assigned female at birth. That is for cisgender people. If you don't know what cisgender means, it means that basically they're assigned that sex at birth. So there's AFAB in the female section, and then there is also trans woman, which means that it's a person that identifies as a female, but their assigned sex at birth was not female. So on to the opposite side of that, we have male. You can also use AMAB, which would be assigned male at birth. Again, used for cisgender men. And then you have trans man, which is somebody that identifies as a male, but was not assigned the male gender or sex when they were born. So the next largest one is non-binary. So it's the opposite of binary. And binary means it's just two sections at the end of the spectrum, male or female. And non-binary is anywhere in between that spectrum or just not in that spectrum at all. So it is an umbrella term for a lot of different gender identities, which we will go into. And sometimes, instead of non-binary, people use genderqueer, which is similar in a way because it is more of an umbrella term. So genderqueer is used when somebody doesn't necessarily have a specific gender identity that matches how they feel. So it is a term that they use that kind of fits under that non-binary spectrum. And when somebody is gender fluid, that means that they fluidly move between the different genders or no gender at all. How they feel in a day or week, even an hour, depends on the gender that they feel at that moment. So that is what makes them gender fluid, because they easily switch between male, female, non-binary, agender, etc. And speaking of agender, that is where somebody does not have a gender. So you might be thinking, wait, what? But how do they not have a gender? Huh? How does that work? Especially if they have a term for that. Well, it's where somebody just doesn't identify with any genders. They don't have one. And yes, of course, there would be a term for that. And it can also be known as gendervoid or just genderless. Next, we have bigender, where with the term bi meaning two, that means that somebody identifies with two genders at once. Generally, it is used when somebody identifies as both male and female, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. They can identify with two different non-binary spectrum genders, or they can do with a non-binary spectrum and male, etc. Basically, the people feel that gender, both two genders at the same time, or the amount of how they feel of each one fluctuates, but that is what makes them bigender. And on top of that, we have polygender, which is where somebody feels like they are multiple genders, not just two, at the same time, or it fluctuates as well. And it's different from gender fluid because it is specific genders. So for example, with gender fluid, it changes fluidly based on how that person feels. Whereas for bigender or polygender, you could identify as male and agender for the bigender one, and then male, agender, and then female for the polygender one. So it's specific ones and it fluctuates, or you feel all of them at the same time. And polygender can also be known as multigender. So those are just a few of the many gender identities, and I will likely make another video in the future explaining more gender identities, but these are just a few of them. And again, pronouns can be used for all of them, no pronouns, whatever pronouns they want. Your gender identity does not necessarily determine what pronouns you use. Yes, it is more common to see, for example, in females with the gender identity of female, to use pronouns she and her, but that is not necessarily exclusive. They can use pronouns they, them, or he, him. But that's just a good thing to keep in mind as you keep educating yourself on all the different gender identities, all the things that have to do with the LGBTQ plus community. Let me know if you want to see another video on gender identities in the future where I go more in depth on even more gender identities that are in the non-binary spectrum, or more just gender identity terms in general that you don't know. But thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you in the next one.